up we have Walt Maguire, and Walt's a good friend of Philadelphia Stories. He did our website for a long, long, long time, and so we're very grateful for everything. He's also on our fiction board, and he's also the author of a few plays, more newspaper and magazine articles, and a lot of that newfangled web content. He has a background in web design and marketing consultation, and he'll be reading today from his new novel, Monkey See, which will be released in July, and there's some postcards over there with more information. So, Walt Maguire.
Well, thanks, Philadelphia Stories. Since the book isn't out yet, I'll just give you a little background. A lot of people have asked me why a book about talking apes? Why this book? Well, that wasn't the tone. It was more like, why this book? And it's just ripped from today's headlines. I just picked this up just now. It's headlines in Scientific American. It's not like it's George Clooney. But and also I am just sick of vampires and zombies. Because if you think about it, I mean, they sexy, but they must have breath issues. They're drinking blood 900 years, they never brush their teeth once. It's just have to. It's just not good. Anyway, the plot of the book is generally that with genetic research and experimentation, sooner or later, it's not like Planet of the Apes, but sooner or later there's going to be a situation where we have creatures who are not just lab experiments and will have to be dealt with as intelligent. So that's why the book started off as an etiquette book. Recipes, new table manners, real estate guide. But then I just decided it was going more about the characters, because it turns out that's what books have. So I was going to read the excerpt that's in the latest issue of Philadelphia Magazine, available now.
Philadelphia Stories.
But I think what I might do instead is read a section that is a little less, maybe a little more appropriate for a sunny day. But I don't think I will. I think I'll read this.
He's on edge.
There are three main characters in the book. Ed, who's a talking ape who was an early experiment, so he mostly just works at Best Buy and eats ice cream and watches all the Schwarzenegger films. And the scientist who created him, who's wishing he would just go away so he can move on with his bigger experiments, and then of course there's the angry chimpanzee, because these stories always have an angry chimpanzee. And by the way, none of the characters dress like characters from Planet of the Apes, because those aren't really very practical outfits. You really, if you're going to get dressed, you need pockets and leather over top of fur. It just doesn't make any sense. So let me read this, and this is the first time I've done this, by the way. This is the grand premiere of the book, since it won't be out for another month, and we just finished the edits about 24 hours ago. So I'll be, if I find any mistakes along the way, I'll point them out. When Ed, the talking ape, got home, he turned on the late night talk shows and fixed himself a bowl of ice cream. He slept on the couch and let the vanilla melt as he flipped, finding nothing comprehensible. Humans and ties laughed or insulted each other, but he could not get the earlier argument out of his head. If it had been his dining room, he never would have let check through the door. Out his window, next to his TV, a streetlight burned at eye level, washing out the moon he passed on the way home. He could see in the shadows other improved apes in the trees, crouched, sitting, staring at the same moon that rolled above Africa, Madagascar, Ceylon. He could walk out this window and join them, but he wouldn't be sure he had joined them. There was no way to tell if this new language meant the same thing to all of them. He lifted his spoon and swallowed his ice cream. Check. sat in his tree in his backyard, fuming at the mortgage rates around here. Backyard trees have become a hot commodity since the neighborhood went ape. Still, he liked his ranch house, and it was convenient to I-95. The moon seemed another trick to him now that the humans had explained what it was. An airless ball of quiet dust, chipped in 1,000 places by other chips of rock and ice. He could not articulate to himself what he thought it was before the operations, but it was better than that. In the next house, he could see that the good professor's wife had gone up to bed. The professor himself could seem to be stalling in the kitchen, weakly filling ice trays. He kept meaning to climb over and see what happens behind the upstairs curtains, but he resisted, not wanting to risk trouble with the police before he had a chance to complete his plans. When the time came, he imagined the joy of tearing down those ugly brown flower curtains and scaring the bejabbers out of Kojitomni and his wife. He bit into another of his fresh-baked madeleines and chewed silently, lost in thoughts of his plots and remembrance of what was half known in the first place. Harold Price Kojitomni, doctor of gerontology, professor of cellular biology, doctor of large animal veterinary, professor of tweaked DNA at Princeton, filled the ice cube trays very slowly from a tight trickle of pure spring water out of the jug dispenser in his kitchen, and thought, too aware of the obvious metaphor, of how impure the world was, of how he had muddied the waters between the species. They didn't need ice, but he was the only one ever to fill it, and he was grateful for the small responsibility, the incredible insignificance of the work. He pulled his robe tight. There was a chill in the vinyl tiles under his feet. Fall approached. The night rustled. He looked to the full moon out the window above the trees he assumed were filled with his new neighbors, though he rarely spotted them even in daylight. Someone had proposed banning tree climbing in a neighborhood meeting, but legal questions aside, there seemed to be no practical way to enforce it. His wife had hung thick curtains over all the windows except for this small one over the kitchen sink, and he found himself drawn to it now on these nights when he could tell himself he knew his audience was out there, watching him, judging him, struggling for a verdict and then a punishment. He poured himself a glass of water from the plastic jug and added one of the fresh ice cubes he popped from the trays. He told himself he could taste purity, though of course he could not. There's a taste to impurity, and it is sometimes what we want. He heard a sound beyond the curtains and moved to the French doors to see a great silverback gorilla, almost white as the moon in streetlights, leap from tree to tree. He had stripped off his human clothes. The apes wore clothes not out of humiliation or vanity, but because they had come to understand it gave them portable shelter in a cold climate and all the freedom pockets can bring. But in the night, in the undressed distances and the proper lighting, they could not stand to ape us. They remembered what we had made them think unimportant. We wanted them to type. We wanted them to speak. We did not care about trees to their way of thinking. Kojitomni watched the great muscled back disappear into a pine and thought, we cannot explain ourselves to them either. I'll go. Thanks.
That's it.